Hello everyone, I'm Adam McIntosh, and I'm here for Music Over Miles to do a video series for you on how to use Garageband. Today our module is going to focus on creating your first track or tracks in Garageband. And the reason why I say track or tracks is because when you open the interface and you start your first project, it's going to give you a drop down of some options of types of tracks that you can create. So, I didn't want to just give you one example of creating a single track because you wouldn't know what to do when it drops down these options for you. So I gave you some answers on the different kinds of tracks that you can create. Now, important note, I always like to start with drums. Drums will give you the rhythm and the tempo that you're going to play to. So if you record something without drums, it's not going to match up to the drums later on. If you put them down first, it will always match up to the rhythm and tempo. All right, let's dive in. I'm Adam McIntosh here for Music Over Miles, and I hope you enjoy this tutorial on starting your first tracks. This is module 2, where we're going to talk about the how-to of creating your first track in GarageBand. At the end of this tutorial, you'll know how to open GarageBand, how to set up your first track, and what a couple of the options are. After that, we'll go into more detail. But for this tutorial, we're just going to look at setting up your tracks. Okay? So, as I said in the last tutorial, GarageBand is a little amplifier with a guitar. It looks just like that. It even says GarageBand when you mouse over it. If you do not see this in your dock, which is the bottom of the computer here, you can click on the search icon and search it, GarageBand. It will come up in your applications folder, and then you can drag it into the dock so that it's always there for you to quickly access. I like to access it quickly because, as I said before, I don't like things getting in the way of the ideas that I have. So this is the simplest, fastest way to set up your track in GarageBand. Click on GarageBand. And when GarageBand opens up the first time, it's going to give you a panel like this. If you've been working in GarageBand before, it will give you a panel like this. This is the GarageBand platform. But what it automatically does by default is it opens the last project you were working on. All right, this is not what we're going to do today. This is something I was toying around with. So if it opens the last project and that's not what you want to work on, just close it. If there's any unsaved data in there, it will prompt you to save it. What we want is this pane right here. New project, empty project, and choose. We're going to choose this because they are in blue. We've selected them. We're not here. We're here. And this is circled in blue, highlighted in blue. That's what we want. So you choose that, and it creates you a nice, clean, new, open GarageBand project. So we're in the application now, and it's asking us to choose a track type. So it will prompt you through this process a little bit as you're creating your tracks. It's asking us, is this a software instrument? What is a software instrument? A software instrument can be a MIDI keyboard, it says that right down here, plugged in with a USB cable, pretty standard. USB cables charge our phones. And if you have one of these, you can play it like a keyboard. These are typically smaller, about 49 keys. But you can play it just like a piano or a keyboard, and it will tell the computer what notes or what pitches you're playing, okay? If you don't have one of these, that's okay, because you can create all of the tones that are available in GarageBand by single tone panels. I'll show you that later. That's MIDI creation, okay? That's further on down the road. But if you do have this and you want to make a keyboard track or strings or anything else that's in here, you would select that. If you don't worry about it. We'll come back to that. Okay, the audio tracks. So as I mentioned before, in the last tutorial, if you are recording audio from out in the world, that's any sound that you want to go into the computer and to have it understand, you would select the microphone. Then you would come down here, you would look at the input. This is where we tell the computer, where did you plug it in? The computer is wondering, right? That's what it's asking you. And we're going to tell it here, I plugged it in, let's say it's an input 2. I plugged it into input 2. In this case, my microphone is plugged into input 1, so I am going to tell it. I plugged it into input 1. I want to hear my instrument as I play and record. Yeah, I need to hear what I'm playing, of course, sure. So you click this box. And I hear sound from, and it will show the interface that you're using by name right here. And if that is in fact the one that you're using, it shows up here, then you simply click on Create. And you have created your first track. This is an audio track. What does that mean? Audio, sound, any sound that you're going to record. It could be your bird. It could be your dog. It could be you singing. Whatever it is, it's going to come in through the microphone and the cable that I was talking about, which you may or may not have. But it's going to create this track over here. And here's the important thing to know about recording audio. If you don't have a microphone and you create an audio track and you record some audio here, that's great. It'll be cool. But as soon as you start adding tracks to this, every time you hit the record button to make a new track or record new information in the new track, it will be playing this track out loud. So it will duplicate and duplicate and duplicate and duplicate until it's just a total mess, okay? And that's why you use a microphone and headphones to separate this from happening. In old studios, like I told you about in Module 1, sound from one track getting onto another was called bleeding. It would bleed, the sound would bleed from one into another, okay? And if you had too much of that, it would sound terrible. So that separation is done with headphones, where you're listening to what's playing here, and it's not being played out in and around the computer where the microphone is, right? Because we don't want to record the same thing over and over again in multiple tracks. That would be bad. It is good practice to name your tracks. I'm going to name this track Albert. And I'm going to tell it, what is Albert doing? He's recording vocals. This is the first take. Why did I put the 1 there? Because as you create more of these down here underneath, you might do 4, 5, or 6. And if they all say audio, it's going to be really hard to remember or tell them apart. They're all going to look very much the same. So when you go back to do any kind of editing or anything else, you're not going to be able to figure out where things are, what to save, what to use, what not. What you can delete, which is also really important. So we name tracks, all right? We have created a vocal track with the audio function by selecting the microphone. Okay, what's the difference, right? So if we go up to track up here and click on that, it's going to give us this drop down that right underneath, the very first thing is new track. So we want to create a new track. It's going to give us the same window that was here. And it's going to ask us the same question, but we have 2 different answers we can give it. This is for a guitar to plug into the interface, but it's under the blue rectangle thing here. Why are these both under the blue rectangle thing? Okay, I get MIDI is green, that's different, but audio, guitar, and microphones, these are audio tracks where it's recording an audio waveform, unlike this, which is MIDI, and this, which looks like an audio waveform, but really it's MIDI. And the difference between the 2 tracks here, audio, your recording of your dog or your bird or yourself singing, can be affected with audio effects. like reverb or delay, which I'll talk about later. Guitar can be affected with guitar effects. So when we're recording guitar, it's important to tell the machine or the device that you're on that you're recording guitar. Again, you have to tell it which input it's in. Mine happens to be an input 2. If yours is an input 1, you would change it. You want to hear your instrument as you record. Of course, in your headphones, you want to hear your instrument. It would be very difficult to play along with a drummer if you couldn't hear it. And I hear sound from Scarlett, do I too, or whatever your interface is called. So you can create a guitar track this way by clicking on Create. And there it is, Guitar 1. Cool, there's all this stuff over here, which we will talk about later. But they will all say Guitar 1, right? So we'll put Sharon on guitar. And we're going to tell it, what kind of guitar is this? This is a guitar solo. All right, so that we can tell this apart from all of the other tracks. This is a very good habit to get into because you get creative and you start making a ton of tracks and then you go back and you can't find anything. So I include this in the process of creating a track. Okay. So drums. I'm going to have a whole module on drums, just about the drums, because they are so important and they're really so flexible and you can change them so much in GarageBand. So I'll talk about them a lot later, but if you wanted to create a drum track, you would simply go back to Track, New Track, click on the drummer, and you would get a drum track. All right. So this happens to be set to what they have decided is alternative drumming. That's a broad category. And what they've named the drummers so that they're easier for you to remember, and it helps me too. But what Nikki, who plays indie disco beats, is going to sound like. Okay, I want to hear it. So this everyone has seen before. Play, stop, rewind, record. This is a looping function, which we can talk about later. But if you hit the play button, all right, so you hear a little bit of what that drum style sounds like. There are many drum styles, and in each one, there are a bunch of different names. There are a bunch of different players. And so you can get many, many different styles in here. And later I'll show you a bunch of cool ways to mess with these and make them even more interesting. But let's say, for example, that you have this drum track. Okay, we talked about tracks. This one's already named. So if you can remember what that is, great. If you want to change it, you can also do that. But look at the drum track here. There's kicks, there's hi-hats, there's snares going on. It is wider and smaller. Smaller for quieter sounds, wider for louder sounds, as I mentioned in Module 1. Later, what's this? This is cool. We can get into all of what this does down here and what these do over here. Blue Ridge, Bluebird, Brooklyn, Detroit Garage. What does that mean? And how do you use it? All right, so in the drum module, I will go into this in depth. We are in the Create a Track module, and so I'm showing you how to create your first track, but also I'm showing you what the Create Track dropdown presents to you, because you might want to go and create your first track, but then you'll see this and you'll go, well, I don't know what kind of track I want to create. Why do I have to tell you? So I've told you all the reasons why you need to tell the computer what you're doing and what you'll get when you click on each of these. Okay, you're not going to break anything by creating an audio track. You can always delete it if it's the wrong one, right? So don't be afraid of using it. Just go back and go, nope, I meant to create a drummer track, right? Okay, so we're not going to open another track here. We're going to finish this out by saying one last thing. I'm going to rewind this to the beginning. You never know what kind of stability the computer that you're working on has. And at any moment, GarageBand, like any app, can crash. So if you've worked, and sometimes I do, for an entire hour or 2 hours on this little stretch of drums to make it sound exactly like you want it to, and GarageBand crashes, you have no idea in that long process at which point it last saved your work. And that is a really terrible place to be. So to prevent that, you're going to go up here to File, and you're going to click on Save As. So before you've started and created multiple tracks, we're going to create a saved version of this project. Some computers will have you save it in the GarageBand folder. That's fine. All your stuff is in GarageBand. Or you can have, like I do, a Recordings All folder. GarageBand's fine. You would put the name of it up here so it doesn't say project. You don't want everything to say project. This will help us remember what was it. It was me figuring out how all the tracks work. Okay, great. You don't need any tags. And you would click Save. First tracks goes into the GarageBand folder, and you see up here the name is different. All right. So the only thing that you have to do after this, in the middle of your creative input, is remember that every 15, 20 minutes or so, it's a good habit to just go File, Save. All right? And then at least you know, sort of, 15 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, I did a save of this. That's where the project is. When you have multiple tracks and they go all the way across the board to 100, you're going to want to know where you left off. All right? So you can start to see some of the things that I talked about in Module 1 come into life here. Multiple tracks, multi-tracking, right? Drummers, guitars, audio outside of the computer going through the interface. These are your first tracks. That's how to create them. So in summary, what did we do? We clicked on GarageBand. We opened a new project. This was the new project. It was completely empty. We went up to tracks. We made a new track. And then we looked at this pane and selected what kind of track we were going to make. We created it after selecting the input. And we got a new track. We named it. And we saved it. So get in the habit of naming your tracks, get in the habit of saving your work, and you'll always have it. You do not want to lose an entire song, ever. That's the worst. So get in the habit of doing that to protect your work, protect your hard work, and that is all for creating your first track or tracks in GarageBand. Here we are in GarageBand. There are tracks. All right, I hope you enjoyed watching this. It was fun to do, and the next modules are going to be fun too. I'm Adam McIntosh. I've been here for Music Over Miles, and I'll see you in the next module.